John Aaron's on the line, State MP for Lara. Good morning.
Good morning, Mitchell, and good morning to your listeners.
Well, we may as well start on the lighter side. I'm wearing my Geelong scarf this morning. Great to see Geelong through to the first grand final in 9 years, and what a big thing it would be for this town if they're able to get up.
We are so excited, and the good part about all of that is a Victorian will win it, regardless of the outcome, whether it's the Tigers or the Cats. Hopefully the Cats bring it back to Cardinia Park, but we've shown again that we're the sporting capital. And the Vixens, what a win in the grand final against the Fever, and certainly they're still celebrating. And next week is a big week with the grand final on the Saturday, and then the Sunday, Melbourne Storm in the grand final against the Panthers. So we're showing that we're leading the way, and hopefully this time next year that all of those events would be happening in our wonderful state of Victoria.
Now, in terms of what's been going on with COVID, I've been watching a lot of media over the last 24 hours or so. Is it the end of détente between the state and federal governments? I've watched Dan Andrews getting stuck into Alan Tudge. I've watched Alan Tudge getting stuck into Dan Andrews. I've watched Josh Frydenberg. And I've also watched Tanya Plibersek attacking the federal government, saying if the COVID Safe app had worked, we would have been out of lockdown a lot quicker in Victoria. So everyone's getting stuck into everyone, it seems.
Well, I think the Premier has been focused in on making sure that we deal with what's at hand, and I think he's kept the politics out of it. I can't say the same for some of the federal members of Parliament, of government. They've put Victoria, obviously, in the firing line when it comes to making comments in the media, but I think the Premier has been quite restrained in his comments because, as he says, politics won't get us through this. If politics would get rid of this virus, then so be it, but it won't. And so I think but the Premier is making cautious comments about some of the misunderstandings of the travel bubble, how 55 New Zealanders ended up in our state, and that's not our jurisdiction, and clearly we're not happy about that. And I think it was, quite right of the Premier to outline that the inadequacies of some of the systems that are in place in terms of travel, we need to be mindful of. And, for what it's worth, Mitchell, back in August at our peak, we reported some 725 daily cases, and at that same time, the UK recorded 891. Yesterday, Victoria's recorded two new cases, as opposed to the UK 16,000. Over 16,000 new cases. And, just in your earlier segment, there was discussions about how, Europe is getting this terrible second wave, and they're inundated. They're going into harsh lockdowns, exactly like France is going into curfew lockdowns. So we've dealt with our second wave. Unfortunately, we did have it. I just hope that New South Wales isn't next, and I hope Queensland isn't next, and certainly there are some, and the particular part about this is the unknown transmissions, those unknown cases who potentially could be super spreaders. And when you consider that, that truck driver that went to Shepparton, and Shepparton is dealing with it at the moment. So it's very much out there, Mitchell, and I can understand why, at this point in after months of dealing with this COVID, that we have inadequate practices in place when it comes to people coming here from abroad, and that's totally a jurisdiction of the federal government.
Well, in terms of that, is the state government responsible for state borders? Should there be more checks and balances at Tullamarine Airport? I believe the Premier's put in authorised officers now, but should they be there checking and saying, well, where have you actually come from and why are you coming into Victoria? Or should the border continue to be open as it is now?
Well, these matters are totally in terms of the jurisdiction. Travel is not the jurisdiction of the state, and where we can assist, where we can obviously now we've got to have precautions in place, seeing as though the system has failed in terms of the travel bubble, and certainly we'll be very vigilantly watching carefully about who does come in and who doesn't. So we are mindful of this, Mitchell. We don't want to make politics of it, and we haven't. The Premier hasn't. But there comes a point in time when a barrage of uncomplimentary remarks are made about Victoria from federal ministers, and Dan's kept quiet about all of that, and he kept dealing with the Prime Minister in terms of that higher level, and he didn't want to engage with other ministers in having a tit-for-tat argument in the public airways. But there comes a time when systems fail like this that you can't keep quiet about it, because you've got to be vocal about it, because there's so much at stake, as we know.
Now, the roadmap, big parts of it have been amended, because I've looked on the website and they've changed stuff in there. It's now highlighted in purple, I think, the things that have changed. So, for example, here, I believe you've gone from 20 people in a hospitality setting to 40 people in the hospitality setting. So how much of the rest of the roadmap will be followed, and how many more amendments will we see to it, do you think?
Well, it's a moving feast, as the Premier outlined, and we go by the data, the strict data that's available to us. Roadmaps are one thing, forecasting is one thing, but the hard data that's before us is what determines in moving towards moving through the restrictions and easing the restrictions. And so as of 11:59 last night, regional Victorians have now changed from a family bubble to having any two adults and their dependents from the same household to visit at a time without a need for a social bubble. I mean, that's a change. And regional libraries and toy libraries will be able to open for a maximum of 20 people indoors. People will be able to hold outdoor religious gatherings for up to 20 people. And from the 1st of November, it'll be 50 people. Indoor pools will reopen for swimmers aged 18 and under, while households will now be allowed to visit a care facility. Hospitality, businesses will be allowed to welcome more patrons, with 40 customers allowed indoors and 70 outdoors from 11:59 p.m. as of last night. So from the 1st of November, again, I say it's a move. We'll see week by week how the numbers are tracking, and we get a bit nervous when there's unknown cases around the community, and we're very cautious about it. We've worked so hard, Mitchell, and every Victorian has worked so hard to get us to this position of having only 4 new cases today, and unfortunately one life was lost, and there's a rolling average of 14 days of 7.2 in Melbourne, and rolling 14-day average for Geelong and the regional areas are 0.5 and 0 new cases. So we want to protect what we've worked so hard for, and the Premier and the Chief Health Officer will determine that on a week-by-week basis. We don't want to restrict people's lives, Mitchell. This is not something that government wants to do. We want to open up the businesses. We want to have the economy churning again, like we were the engine room prior to COVID in terms of jobs, and we were leading the way. For the first time ever, we beat New South Wales. But when COVID hit, we don't want to be in this position. We don't want restriction. We want to ease them. But we've got to be cautious about them. We've worked too hard to let it go now, and that's why the Premier and the Chief Health Officer will make announcements accordingly to the data that they have in freeing up some of the activities in terms of easing restrictions.
Now, the Northern Arc has been renamed to the Northern Aquatic Centre and Community Hub, I believe, and the rationale behind that was it'd be easier to get funding because it quite clearly says in the name where the money is going. Do you agree? Is it going to be easier now for people to lobby for government funding for this project?
Well, as a local member, I'm very supportive of it, as are my other colleagues, the member for Geelong, the member for South Barwon. Indeed, every local member is an advocate for this project in relation to how useful and beneficial it would be, not only for my electorate in the north, but indeed for the wider Geelong population. And, it's certainly on my wish list, and whenever it is that the budget is announced at some point later, this year, I'm certainly praying that the powers that be have listened to some of the very important issues that I've raised in relation to the Northern Arc, and I've encouraged the council to actually do the next stage of the business case, which is the detailed business case, which will make it shovel ready, and they've accepted, to their credit, because if it's not shovel ready, then governments, whether it's federal or state, cannot be in a position to fund something that actually hasn't got a detailed plan. So the council are doing that. I hear some positive comments made by Sarah Henderson about this, but there is some the devil's in the detail in terms of how much can be accessed when that money that she's talking about can be accessed. I think she was saying but by the end of 2021. So there are certain timelines. The project is a worthy project. I truly believe it is. And certainly as a state member, I'm working very hard to have a positive outcome on this in some way, shape or form. But it is very much dependent on the detailed business case that the council is preparing at the moment.
Well, John, thank you so much for being on the program. It's always good to catch up, and we'll talk to you again next month.
Thanks, Mitchell.
Thank you very much, John Eren, joining us there, the State MP for Lara.